Interdependence Day by John Daniel. It would be a quieter holiday. No fireworks or loud parades, no speeches, no salutes to any flag. A day of staying home instead of crowding away. A day we celebrate nothing gained in war, but what we're given, how the sun's warmth is democratic, touching everyone, and the rain is democratic too, how the strongest branches in the wind give themselves as they resist and give themselves, how birds could have no freedom without the planet's weight to wing against, how the earth itself could come to be only when a whirling cloud of dust pledged allegiance as a world, circling dependently around a star, and the star blossomed into fire from the ash of other stars. And once at the dark zero of our time, a blaze of revolutionary light exploded out of nowhere, out of nothing, because nothing needed the light, as the brilliance of the light itself needs nothing.
Here comes the sun, here comes the sun, and I say it's all right.
Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. It's all right.
Little darling, the smiles returning to their faces. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. It's all right.
Sun, 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 here it comes. 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 Little darling, I feel that ice is slowly melting. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been clear. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Ooh, oh. Sun, 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 here it comes.
Good morning and welcome to Minnesota Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. My name's Laura Thompson. I'm the minister here. We are grateful and full of joy to have guests from other regional UU congregations joining us today, to our siblings from the south in Mankato and Northfield, to our siblings in the west in Minnetonka and Wayzata, to the north in Fridley and Bismarck, Mandan, and our friends in the east in Eau Claire. Welcome, welcome, welcome. For those of you who are interested in learning more about us or getting on our mailing list, I invite you to click on the visitor link that should be posted in the chat. We come from many places today. We carry many stories and many dreams. We carry many burdens, wounds, and scars. Each of our journeys is unique, and yet all of them have led us to be together here in this space today, to seek companionship and comfort, to find renewal and our own resilience, to bear witness together to life's challenges and heartbreak, and to recommit ourselves to building a beloved community for all. We acknowledge those who have gone before us in creating and recreating and sustaining these safe and brave spaces that we call our congregation and our faith. We acknowledge those whose conviction and hope continue to call us forward, the prophets and the poets, activists and elders, our children, and all the children for generations to come. Though we join together today in virtual space, we reside in spaces that are the homelands of the Dakota, Ojibwe, Ho-Chunk, Anishinaabe, and Menominee peoples. I stand today not very far from the sacred site Bedote, which is the converge of the Minnesota and Mississippi rivers. The place of the waters meeting is often referred to this specific place. Bedote means any convergence, but the Bedote that I'm talking about is a very sacred space for the Dakota. It is said that that is where the Dakota arrived in human form. So it's their Genesis story is right in the Minnesota Valley here. 7 tribes of Dakota are said to have descended from the 7 stars of Orion's belt, arriving at the convergence of Minnesota and Mississippi rivers. And so that's where we are, in this magical place. We reside here now with the descendants of the first peoples. May we too honor this land and these spaces as sacred. And may we continue to do the work of repair and healing of the wounds and the generational trauma that was caused by colonizer and settler history. We cannot change our past, but we can acknowledge it and we can vow to do better for us all. And that's part of the work that we've come together to do today. So again, welcome to Minnesota Valley UU Fellowship. It is so good to be with you all today. I'm just going to open up here for a little bit of announcements, just in case anybody else has any announcements. I just want to remind our folks that Betty Gutman's Celebration of Life service is next Sunday at 2 o'clock. That's here in person and on YouTube. Is there anybody from any of the other congregations that might have an announcement that they need to share with folks today? No? In that case, I will invite you to share in the words for lighting our chalice, and to light a chalice where you are. The words should be printed over in your chat. As we kindle this flame, may it spark in each of us connection and commitment to this living tradition, to the place, to the call of peace and justice, and to each other. It's the tradition at Minnesota Valley that we set aside a few moments each week to lift up the joys and sorrows of the congregation. That would be all of you folks that are gathered here today. And so you can share one of 2 ways. You can print something over in the chat, and I'll make sure that I read it so that everybody can hear it if they've turned away from their screen. Also for folks who might be tuning in on YouTube, that they can hear it. So please feel free to share joys and sorrows over in the chat. Oh, for the Mankato folks, in case you didn't see it, there's David Allen's obituary is in the Free Press this morning. I'm just going to give you all a couple more minutes to think if you have joys or sorrows to share, because we have 87 people here, or 87 accounts logged on, which is actually more than 87 people. I'm sure somebody has something to share. Well, there we go. The Reese clan got out to Bush Lake with their 50-plus canoe and a new SUP for Carla, which I saw pictures of this on Facebook, and it's some kind of paddleboard thing. And it's great to see those pictures. I had a joy last night that I spent time talking on the phone with Reverend Sarah Smalley, who will be at the Northfield Fellowship starting next week. She's very excited. So I want to share that joy with you folks. I know you have grief about Kristen leaving, and that's a real thing too. So we hold both things. Joy of overabundance of red and black raspberries that we can share with family. That's from someone. Janet Scannell says, happy birthday to their twins, Allison and Brian, from Janet and Beth in Northfield. Joy for all the fresh summer herbs and berries, indeed. Congratulations to Dr. Tess Johnson, who graduated from veterinary school yesterday. A concern and sorrow that Neil Lockwood is now receiving hospice care at Methodist Hospital. Thank you all for sharing. I'll ask now if you want to join us in our sung response. Oh, there's one more. Concern for a mother-in-law who is recovering from a stroke. I also want to lift up just our concerns for it's summer and the weather is extreme in some places. Maybe here today, later today. And that's a big concern for folks living on the West Coast right now where it's been so hot. I'm sure the South is going to get some of it as well. And all of those folks who are vulnerable to that heat, I just want to lift that up as part of summer. Unfortunately, it's part of climate change as well. So thank you for sharing. And will you please join us now in our sung response, and that'll be up on your screen. Richard, there's no audio with that. Take two. Can we get it with audio?
We have our thoughts to receive. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a need to be together.
For our centering space today, I chose a 6-minute long music meditation by Danielle River. And before we begin, I want to invite you all to find a comfortable posture. Make sure you're where you need to be. Relax your shoulders. Take a breath in and breathe out. And as you exhale, let any tension you're holding in your body soften. Breathe in, breathe out. Let love in, let tension out. Breathe in, breathe out. Let these words and music find you and take you to a place of peace.
Oh, love, I pray that you break my heart so wide open that the whole world falls in. I confess I've been trying so hard to keep it all out, keep it all out. So love, I pray that you break my heart so wide open that the whole world falls in. I give up trying so hard to keep it all out, keep it all out. So love, fill me, breathe me to pieces. Love, I pray that you break my heart so wide open that the whole world falls in. If I'm made for love, make me strong enough. And when I need to hide, love, hold me in your grace until I feel safe. Then love, fill me, breathe me to pieces. Love, come fall into my heart, it's wide open. Doves fly out and doves come home, here to rest. In my heart is wide open, heart is wide open, my heart is wide open, heart is wide open, my heart is wide open, fill me, breathe is wide open. Heart is wide open. My heart fill me. Breathe me to heart is wide open. Heart is wide open. My heart is when I need to hide. Love, hold me in your grace. Heart is wide open. My heart is when I need to hide. Love, hold me in your grace. Breathe me to peace when I need to hide. Love, hold me in your grace. Heart is wide open. My heart is when I need to hide. Love, hold me in your grace. Heart is wide open. Sweet love, I pray that you break my heart so wide open that the whole world falls in.
Our hearts break open and we let the world in. We let in beauty, we let in love. We also let in healing. And in breaking our hearts open and letting the world in, we make space for the stories and experiences of others to share in the beauty they offer and in the pain that they carry. Here to share a story that does just that is our Director of Family Ministries, Maria Bevere.
My name is Maria Bevere, and I'm at Minnesota Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm the Children, Youth, and Family Ministry Director here. I'd like to take a moment to speak to the children, youth, and families. When we are young, we rely on our grown-ups for everything: milk, cleanliness, comfort, everything. As we grow older, we try to do more things on our own. I remember when my child was a toddler and I would sit on the floor while he would explore different toys. Like he'd go over to a toy train and then he'd come back and show me it. Or he'd go a little further away and check out that stuffed animal, but then want to come back to me. Toddlers go explore a little further and come back. That's part of their learning. As my son got older, he would go and play with friends further away, like down the street, and come back. This dance of going away and coming back, of supporting one another as a family and as a community, is so beautiful. This story that I want to share with you today, it's about an Indigenous grandmother and her granddaughter in Canada. The young girl is learning from her grandmother. The grandmother is of the Cree Nation of Indigenous peoples, and she was forced by European colonizers to go to a residential school. She had to leave the interdependence of her family and her community. That was wrong. Listen for how the grandmother shares independence, freedom, and happiness with her granddaughter.
When We Were Alone by David A. Robertson, illustrated by Julie Flett. Today I helped my kokom in her flower garden. She always wears colorful clothes. It's like she dresses in rainbows. When she bent down to prune some of the flowers, I couldn't even see her because she blended in with them. She was like a chameleon. "Nocom, why do you wear so many colors?" I asked. Nocom said, "Well, Nosisim, when I was your age at home in my community, my friends and I wore many different colors. But at the school I went to, far away from home, they gave us different clothes to wear. All the children were dressed the same, and our clothes weren't colorful at all. We all mixed together like storm clouds." "Why did you have to dress like that?" I asked. "They didn't like that we wore such beautiful colors," Nocom said. "They wanted us to look like everybody else." But sometimes in the fall, when we were alone and the leaves had turned to their warm autumn hues, we would roll around on the ground. We would pile the leaves over the clothes they had given us, and we would be colorful again. And this made us happy. "Now," Nocom said, "I always wear the most beautiful colors." After I helped with the flowers, we went over to the back gate. There were vines covering the gate, and they reached all the way to the ground. When my Kokom turned to fix the latch, I saw that her braid hung almost as low as the vines. It was like she had a tail. "Nocom, why do you wear your hair so long?" I asked. Nocom said, "Well, Nosisim, when I was your age at home in my community, my friends and I grew our hair long, just like our people have always done. It made us feel strong and proud. But the school I went to, far away from home, they cut off all our hair. Our strands of hair mixed together on the ground like blades of dead grass." "Why did you have to wear your hair like that?" I asked. "They didn't like that we were proud," Nocom said. "They wanted us to be like everybody else." But sometimes in the spring, when we were alone and the grass had grown so long and thick in the field, we would pick the blades from the ground. We would braid them into our short hair they had given us, and we would have long hair again. And this made us happy. "Now," Nocom said, "I always wear my hair very long." After my Kokom had fixed the latch, I followed her to the birdhouse. There was a bird flying through the air, just like a jingle dress dancer. She fed the bird and whispered, "Na pinaisis mixiso tamisi kitiin tamaskisi yin." And her words sounded just like a poem. "Here, little bird, eat, so you will get big and strong." "Nocom, why do you speak in Cree?" I asked. Nocom said, "Well, Nosisim, when I was your age at home in my community, my friends and I always spoke our language. But at the school I went to far away from home, they wouldn't let us speak our words. All the children used their strange words, and we didn't understand them at all. Our voices blended together like a flock of crows." "Why did you have to talk in their language?" I asked. "They didn't like that we spoke our language," Nocom said. "They wanted us to talk like everybody else." But sometimes in the summer, when we were alone and our teachers weren't anywhere around the place we were, we would whisper to each other in Cree. We would say all the words we weren't allowed to say, so we wouldn't forget them. And this made us happy. "Now," Nocom said, "I always speak my language." After our gardening work was done, I sat with my Kokom in the backyard. Her brother came over and sat with us. He comes over all the time. We drank tea and ate bannock. The tea was hot and sweet, and the bannock was moist and warm and melted in my mouth. My Kokom and my uncle talked and laughed like children. "Nocom, why do you and Nokomis always spend time together?" I asked. Nocom said, "Well, Nosisim, when we were your age at home in our community, being with family was the most important thing. We played with each other, did chores together, and shared everything. But at the school I went to far away from home, They wouldn't let us be together. My brother and I were separated like day and night. Why were you and Nokome separated? I asked. They didn't like when we were with family, Nokome said, because when we were together we thought too much of home. But sometimes in the winter, when we were alone and we were sure that nobody could see us, we would find each other. We would take off our mitts, and in the crisp, cold air we would hold hands so we could be with each other, and this made us happy. Now, Nokome said, as she reached over and held my uncle's hand and mine, I am always with my family.
Thanks, Maria. Our ministries, our work, and our space are supported by the generosity of our members, friends, and guests through pledges and donations. Together, we continually renew and sustain our mission to be an inclusive community seeking the light of truth, carrying the fire of commitment to build a better world through love and service. Over in the chat, you'll see a link to donate. You can click on the link and follow the directions, or you can also donate using the Give Plus app on your Android or Apple device and follow the directions to give to Minnesota Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. We thank you for any donations that you might be able to offer today. $250 years ago, the American Revolution began. The American patriots were fighting against British rule. Jonathan Mayhew, America's first great Unitarian minister, coined their battle cry, "No taxation without representation." Mayhew was a radical preacher whose sermons espoused American rights, the cause of liberty, and the right and duty to resist tyranny. His sermons and writings were a powerful influence in the development of the movement for liberty and independence. President John Adams later called Mayhew's work the spark that ignited the American Revolution. Mayhew, along with other notable Unitarians, including Paul Revere, John Hancock, and John and Abigail Adams, stoked the fires for the American Revolution and paved the way for American independence from Britain, which we celebrate today. We were to be a country free from tyranny, a land of freedom, and we hold to these words that were enshrined in that Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Words we are all familiar with. Did you know, though, that included in Thomas Jefferson's rough draft of the Declaration was a statement where Jefferson was adamant about having the document's petitions against King George include a condemnation of the king for creating and sustaining the slave trade, describing it as a cruel war against human nature. Of course, this statement indicted Jefferson, a slaveholder himself, and the colonies as much as the king. Both Southern and Northern colonists believed that it was pushing it too far and that it should be removed from the final draft. And of course it was. The one illusion in that being that remained was the sentence of accusations against the king, which stated, "He has excited domestic insurrections among us." This is in part to the fact that British soldiers were promising freedom to colonial slaves if they would rise up and fight against their masters. Jefferson went on to say, or the Declaration of Independence goes on to say that the king has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of welfare is undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. Of course, our genocide of Native peoples of all ages, sexes, and conditions who were here before the colonists is not seen as merciless or savage. And so we look at that document and right away we see some problems in its writing, in some of the things that are our foundation. We look at it and we see, well, wait a minute, also that it wasn't really all men that were created equal, because certainly colonial slaves and indigenous people weren't. And what about women? There's no mention of women. It just says all men. In March of 1776, Abigail Adams wrote to her husband, John, who was one of those founding fathers drafting those articles in the Declaration of Independence, and she wrote to him, and these are her words: "I long to hear that you have declared an independency, and by the way, the new code of laws, which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you would remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to form a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation. That your sex are naturally tyrannical is truth, so thoroughly established as to admit of no dispute, but such of you as wish to be happy willingly give up the harsh title of master for the more tender and endearing one of friend." Oh, Abigail, thank you for those words. And I'm sorry they weren't heard and put into our founding documents, because imagine how it could have been different if in the writing of the founding documents they did include Jefferson's petition against slavery. If in those founding documents they formed respectful relationships with the Native Americans consistently from the beginning. If they remembered the ladies, we would have broken free from much more tyranny than just that of King George. We would have freed ourselves from enshrining the tyranny of racism and subjugation of women into the foundational building blocks of our nation. Just imagine what that might have looked like if we had done that. And it's nice to imagine, but it's not where we are today. Now, I'm not saying that we haven't made progress. As the old Virginia Slim cigarette ad goes, we have come a long way, baby. We have come a long way because all along the way, we've been working to right our wrongs, working toward correcting missteps and learning and being accountable to mistakes we've made all along the way. And we are still here working because there's still injustice and there are still wrongs to be righted and painful histories to be healed, as we've learned of recently with the recent recoveries of bodies at churches, which, by the way, there were at least 2 Unitarian churches who were charged with running in schools for Native Americans, although I don't think they were as horrific as some of the other examples we've seen in the news. But still, we engaged in that as well. Now, part of our purpose as humans is to become, well, just to become, but to become better, to become more aware, to become into our oneness with all, right? Isn't that the ultimate goal of any religion or moral existence? To become this, whatever this thing is, however you name it or feel it. That is our call and our purpose. The great Unitarian reformer, activist, and abolitionist Theodore Parker, predicting the inevitable success of the abolitionist cause, said, "I do not pretend to understand the moral arc of the universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but a little ways. I cannot articulate the curve and complete the figure by just the experience of sight. But I can divine it by conscience. And from what I see, I am sure that it bends towards justice." As Unitarian Universalists, we hold to that idea. We know that through human actions and endeavors that we can bend that arc. We can pull it, we can beg it, we can coax it. Today, we're still working on a lot of these things to bend that arc. We're still working on racial justice. We are still working on equality for women. We're still working to heal our relationships with our Native American neighbors. And it continues alongside LGBTQ rights, ensuring inclusive and best practices in our democratic and voting processes, working for economic justice and environmental justice, working for immigrant rights. On July 4th, 1776, we declared our independence from Britain and our great nation was born. And every day after that, there has been work to do to ensure that we could eventually live into the bold claim that all, we'll cross out the men, are created equal and born with the unalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so, friends, I come before you today and ask you to consider a new declaration, a declaration to be lived out in your everyday life, your political life, your economic life, your life as a consumer, a friend, a neighbor, a stranger to others. I call on you to live out a declaration of interdependence. If this last year has taught us anything, it is just how much we need one another. It has taught us how much impact our everyday actions and inactions can have on one another. That is the great lesson of this pandemic. That is the great lesson of the rise of anti-racism that we see among us. Everything we do or don't do has an effect. Everything we know or don't know has an effect. Everything we believe or don't believe has an effect on others, an effect on decisions and policies that are made, an effect on this land, on this planet, an effect on life and death, an effect on that moral arc and the future we create. Now, I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with the notion of independence in a geographically political sense of the word. But folks, Americans took that notion of independence and ingrained it so deeply into her culture that we have become a nation soaked in rugged individualism. You can do anything. You can become anything. Greatness can be yours, just yours. The American dream, the independent version of it anyway, which is what we're all familiar with. But what is possible if the American dream is not framed in individualism, but in an awareness of our interdependence? Dare I say collectivism? You can tag me as a Marxist if you need to at this point. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, declare the reality of our interdependence on one another to be the central guiding principle of our nation in order to end poverty and hunger, provide living wages and affordable housing for all, give greater access to better and further education for everyone, eliminate hate and curb violence, end discrimination and oppression in all forms, end war, live into the highest ideas of democracy, value a better life for all over the monetary profit of a few. Let us then make a declaration of our interdependence and begin a new American revolution, raising up the cause of justice, peace, and equality and compassion as our highest ideas. If we are capable of building this land into what it has become, then we are capable of building it into something else. Let's get to work. Let's continue the work we're doing. Let's support one another and take care of ourselves and each other on the long road ahead. May it be so. Happy 4th of July, and amen. I was just thinking earlier how great it would be if those, well, first of all, if they took the gunpowder that makes the boom noise out of the fireworks so it quit scaring our dogs and the squirrels and the bees and people who might have PTSD or be sensitive to that, folks with autism, that kind of thing. Fireworks don't have to boom, they add that. What would it be like if we had a 4th of July where those things were celebrating our compassion? Can you imagine? Can you just hold that in your heart for a minute? That's what I hope for. I also hope that you'll join in our closing hymn, which I forgot to write what it was down here next to the link. I think it might be the First Unitarian Church of Brooklyn again, but I'm not sure. Here we go.
Justice shall roll down like waters, and peace
devastations from mold, restoring ruins of generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come build a land where the mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where like oaks of righteousness stand her people. Oh, come build the land, my people we seek. Come build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
May the love that gives life its beauty find its way to you. May the reverence that gives life its sacredness radiate from your open heart. May the purpose that gives life its deep